Santiago de Querétaro is the capital and largest city of the state of Querétaro, located in central Mexico. It is part of the macroregion of Bajío. It is located 213 kilometers northwest of Mexico City, 63 kilometers southeast of San Miguel de Allende and 200 kilometers south of San Luis Potosí. The city of Querétaro is divided into 7 boroughs: Josefa Vergara y Hernández, Felipe Carrillo Puerto, Centro Histórico, Cayetano Rubio, Santa Rosa Jáuregui, Félix, Osores, Sotomayor and Epigmenio, González. In 1996, the historic center of Querétaro was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Querétaro has repeatedly been recognized as the metro area with the best quality of life and as the safest city in Mexico, and also as the most dynamic in Latin America. It is a strong business and economic center and a vigorous service city that is experiencing an ongoing social and economic revitalization. Querétaro has seen an outstanding industrial and economic development since the mid-1990s. Querétaro metropolitan area has the second highest GDP per capita among Mexico's metropolitan areas, with $20,000 after Monterrey. The city is the fastest growing in the country, basing its economy to IT and data centers, logistics services, aircraft manufacturing and maintenance, call centers and manufacturing center for automotive and machinery industry, chemicals and food products. The region of Querétaro has a rapidly growing vineyards agriculture, and it hosts the famous wine producer from Spain, Freixenet. The wine production in Querétaro is now the second largest in Mexico after the Baja California region. This has caused the city and the metropolitan area to attract many migrants from other parts of Mexico. Querétaro is the host for major corporations such as Bombardier Aerospace, Kellogg's, Samsung Electronics, Daewoo, Colgate-Palmolive, General Electric, Michelin, Tetra Pak, Siemens Mexico, New Holland, Arvin Merita, Autoliv, TRW Automotive, Tremec, Valeo Sylvania, Procter & Amp, Gamble, Nestlé, Pilgrim's Pride, Santander Bank's call center for Latin America, Mabe Mexico, Irazar, Scania, Hitachi, Costal, Air Nova, Dana, Dow Chemical, Bose, Alpha Helix, Saint-Gobain, Flex-N-Gate, and ThyssenKrupp, among others. Etymology: in the Otomi language, it is referred to as Maxi or Endamaxi, which means ball game and the grand ball game respectively. In the Puebcha language, it is referred to as Cratero, meaning place of crags, referring to the rocky hills of Low Canada. In the Mendocino Codex, the town is called Tlaxco or Tlaxo, from the Nahuatl for ball game. However, Querétaro most likely comes from Querétaro, meaning place of the great people, especially since during Aztec times about 15,000 people lived here. Querétaro has an Aztec glyph to represent it, as it was a tributary province. In 1655, it received a coat of arms from the Spanish crown. The word Querétaro was voted by 33,000 participants as the most beautiful word in the Spanish language, before being approved by the Instituto Cervantes. In pre-Columbian terminology, Querétaro literally means the island of the blue salamanders. Nevertheless, other scholars suggest that it can mean place of the reptiles or place of the giant rocks. Quote, in addition, Gael Garcia Bernal was one of the major promoters and figures of the festivals planned to celebrate Querétaro's award. History: pre-foundation, the area was settled around AD 200 by Mesoamerican groups moving north, and archaeological sites here show Teotihuacan influences. For the Classic period, there were two population centers in this area called Toliquilla and Ruanas. The mountain now known as El Cerrito was a ceremonial center, but was later abandoned for unknown reasons. In the later pre-Hispanic period, the area was populated by the Otomi, who had become sedentary urban dwellers with sophisticated politics by the time of the Aztec Empire, who referred to them as the Tlaxcatli Otomi or Otomi nation-state. This area was under control of the Otomi dominion of Xilotepec in the 1440s, which in turn was subject to the Aztec Empire of Mexico-Tenochtitlan. Under the reign of Ahazota in the late 15th century, the Aztecs administered the area directly, considering it a bulwark against the Chichimeca lands to the north. The Otomi were the most populous ethnicity in Xilotepec, although there were other groups, primarily Chichimeca as well. These two groups are still found here today. During the pre-Hispanic and colonial times, the Otomi were organized into familial clan-like groups with defined territories, living in stone, wood or adobe dwellings. They were sedentary farmers who fought, but unlike the Aztecs, did not make warfare large part of the culture. The foundation of the Spanish city of Santiago de Querétaro is pegged to the 25th of July 1531, when Spaniard Hernán Pérez Bocanegra y Córdoba arrived with the allied Otomi leader Conan, who was the administrative head of the Otomi peoples living in Aztec-controlled territory. On this date, the Spanish and the Nuan allies were battling the local insurgent Otomi and Chichimecas at a hill now known as San Gremel, and which was called Uncatepec and considered sacred in pre-Hispanic times. Chronicles of this event, such as that written by Friar Isidro Félix de Espinosa, state that the Chichimeca were at the point of winning when a total eclipse of the sun occurred. This supposedly scared the Chichimeca, and the Spanish claimed to have seen an image of St. James riding a white horse carrying a rose-colored cross. This event caused the Chichimeca to surrender. This event is why the city is called Santiago de Querétaro, with James as patron saint. A stone cross imitating the one the Spanish supposedly saw was erected on the hill, which later was accompanied by a church and monastery. Spanish dominion, however, grew gradually and was definitively not won through just a single battle. In the 1520s, the Otomas and many Chichimecas of what is now southern Querétaro and northern Mexico state allied with Hernán Cortés under the control of the Lord of Xilotepec, who still maintained a certain amount of control of the old dominion. The first Spanish arrived between 1526 and 1529, headed by Hernán Pérez de Bocanegra. Bocanegra at first tried non-violent means of subduing the area and founding a Spanish city. However, the initial attempts to establish the city of Querétaro were repelled by the locals, forcing Bocanegra south and establishing the cities of Huimilpan and Acambaro. Bocanegra continued negotiating with the Lord of Xilotepec, Conan. The Lord's cooperation was gained, for which he was eventually credited for bringing an end to the Spanish Chichime-Otomi conflict and was made the Spanish governor of the area. However, most of Querétaro's early colonial history was marked by skirmishes between the remaining Chichimeca insurgency and the Spanish authorities, with one of the first being over the establishment of encomiendas. Conan separated the indigenous and Spanish residents of the new city, with the indigenous on and around San Gremel Hill and the Spanish around where the current historic center is. The Spanish part of the city was laid out by Juan Sanchez de Lanas, and the indigenous section was laid out in the traditional Otomi manner. The first city council convened in 1535, and the settlement was named a Pueblo de Indios in 1537, ending the encomiendas. During this time, the Franciscans arrived for missionary work, who were later joined by the Jesuits, the Augustinians and others who built in monasteries such as the Monastery of San Francisco, Lima and the Monastery of Santa Cruz. Peak of colonial era. The settlement was declared a town in 1606, and by 1655, only Spaniards were living in the city proper. In 1656, it was decreed as the muy noble y leal ciudad de Santiago de Querétaro. This honor was solicited by Viceroy Luis de Velasco, in recognition of Querétaro's growth, agricultural production, industry and educational institutions. By the 18th century, it was informally known as the Pearl of the Bajío, and the third city of the Viceroyalty. By the 17th century, the Franciscans had been joined by the Diguinos, who built the monastery of San Antonio, the Jesuits, who built the colleges of San Ignacio and San Francisco Javier, as well as the Dominicans, the Carmelites and the Royal Convent of Santa Clara de Asis, which was one of the largest and most opulent in New Spain. Querétaro was also the site for the training of many of missionaries that went north as far as Texas and California. Most of these were educated at the Colegio de Propagación de la Fe, which was established at the Monastery of Santa Cruz in 1683. Some of its graduates even went as far as South America. Few of the buildings from the 16th century have remained intact, due to the violence during the city's initial development, which reached its peak in the 17th century. As a result, most of the city's oldest structures are of Baroque style. Independence and capital status. Querétaro is considered to be one of the cradles of Mexican independence, and much of the credit is given to Josefa Ortiz-de Domínguez. She was the wife of the city's mayor, called a corregidor, at the beginning of the 19th century. She used her prominent position to gather intelligence for the nascent insurgency. Literary circles called tertulias were a popular pastime for the upper Creole classes, as they also served as a relatively safe place to discuss politics. One such occurred regularly at the house of José María Sánchez, with the name of the Asociación de Zapatistas, which became a group dedicated to independence and winning supporters to the cause. Members included Licenciados Lorenzo de la Parra, Juan Nepomuceno Mir y Altamirano, Manuel Ramirez de Arellano y Mario Lazo de la Vega, José María Sánchez, Fray José Lozano, Antonio Teles, Don Emeterio y Epigmenio González, José Ignacio de Villasena Cervantes y Aldama Drive, Manuel Marciano Iturriaga, Pedro Antonio de Septerin Montero y Ostri, Luis Mendoza, Juan José García Rebolo, Francisco Logero, Ignacio Gutierrez, Mariano Hidalgo, Mariano Lozada, José María Buenrostro, Manuel Delgado, Francisco Arroyo, Felipe Correa, Francisco Lanzagorta, Ignacio Villasena and José María Sotelo. The group was visited on occasion by Ignacio Allende, Juan Aldama, Josefa Ortiz-de Domínguez, Miguel Domínguez and Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla. This association was important for the early organization of those seeking independence for Mexico. However, the most famous of the tertulias was hosted by Josefa Ortiz-de Domínguez herself at what is now the Palace of the Corregidora. Originally, they were open to both Creoles and Spanish-born, but after an altercation between Ignacio Allende and the Spaniard Crisostomo López y Valdez, only Creoles attended. The tertulias of Josefa Ortiz-de Domínguez culminated in the conspiracy of 1810, which was discovered before they had planned to act. On the 13th of September 1810, Epigmenio González was arrested for having stockpiled weapons for an insurgency, and the next day Mayor Miguel Domínguez and his wife Josefa Ortiz de Domínguez were arrested for the roles in the conspiracy of 1810. With the conspiracy discovered, she still managed to get a warning to Miguel Hidalgo. He eluded capture and rushed to Dolores, where he gave his famous grito. For her actions, La Corregidora was imprisoned several times between 1810 and 1817. She died impoverished and forgotten, but was later remembered when she became the first woman to appear on a Mexican coin. Once the armed battle began, the city was taken by the Royalist army and was the last major city to be taken by the insurgents. After the end of the war, the Santiago de Querétaro became the capital of the state of Querétaro in 1823, with the first state congress convening at the auditorium of the Instituto de Bellas Artes de la Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro in the city. The state's first constitution was promulgated in the city in 1825, with the city as head of one of the state's 6 districts. From 1869 to 1879, the districts were subdivided into municipalities, which the city of Querétaro is seat of both the municipality of Querétaro and the district of Querétaro. In the 20th century, the original municipality of Querétaro divided into 3, Querétaro, El Marqués and Corregidora. The district system as a political entity was abolished after the Mexican Revolution, with the municipality as the base of local government. The first municipal president was Alfonso Camacho, who took office in 1917. In 1847, it was declared the capital of Mexico when U.S. forces invaded the country. 1 year later, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed in the city, ceding almost half of Mexico's territory and ending the war. In 1854, another treaty signed here led to the Gadsden Purchase. In 1867, Maximilian I of Mexico was defeated at the Battle of the Cerro de las Campanas, where the liberals took him prisoner along with Generals Miguel Miramontes and Tomás Mejía. In May 1867, the emperor was sentenced to death along with Mejía and Miramontes in the Cerro de las Campanas. No major battles were fought here during the Mexican Revolution, but various of the factions passed through here given the state's location between the northern states and Mexico City. 20th century. In 1916, the city was again named the capital of the country due to the Tampico affair. In 1917, the Constitución Política de los Estados Unidos Mexicanos is promulgated by the Constitutional Congress and President Venustiano Carranza. This constitution still remains the law of the land. World Heritage Site by UNESCO. In 1996, the historic center of Querétaro was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. According to UNESCO's website, the old colonial town of Querétaro is unusual in having retained the geometric street plan of the Spanish conquerors side by side with the twisting alleys of the Otomi quarters. The Otomi, the Tarasco, the Chichimeca and the Spanish lived together peacefully in the town with similar standards of living, a rare occurrence at a time when the indigenous and Hispanic were usually separated by a large income gap and at odds with one another in other parts of the nation. This peace and similarity of social integration is largely attributed to the fact that the local indigenous ethnicities and Spanish reached peace early after contact and both functioned concurrently, with the indigenous retaining their own economic and social systems while the criollos operated in a separate but integrated society within the city. The city is notable for the many ornate civil and religious Baroque monuments from its golden age in the 17th and 18th centuries. In 2008, National Geographic listed Querétaro as one of the top 15 historic destinations of the world.